Diego Muniz, he's done it again. Oh, what a lovely goal. And I'm delighted for Sasha Lukic. It's his first goal for the club and he'll love that. The Hammersmith enders are on their feet. It's Muniz again. Fulham 3-0 ahead.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your Fulham podcast from Down Under. We're back again for the last time this season, at least for a match preview, as we talk about the final game of the 2023-24 season. Fulham playing Luton at Kenilworth Road. Here to talk it all through, we have Skibby. How are we going, mate?
Yeah, all good. It's the last preview of the season, so it's a little bit sad, but hey-ho. Onwards, and I mean, we've got other content coming up, so that to look forward to. So I'm reasonably chipper.
Yeah,
put it that way.
It's funny you say I'm a little bit sad, but at the same time, with our current form, I'm not that sad. It actually feels like it's time to just finish this season, and we can start thinking about next season already.
Absolutely.
And also here to talk it all through, Elton. How are we going, Dad?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. And I think everything is in its right place. It's kind of feeling like it should feel at the moment. And I wouldn't say I'm ready for the season to be over because I will miss it. But I'm not sure how long a losing streak I can actually cope with. So I'm quite happy to bookend this one.
It's interesting, really. You talk about. I think about last season, and it was such a memorable season. Like so many great results, a really great. Just the team felt like they were in a really good place, despite the whole Mitro controversy and the sending off against Man United. It still felt like a very good season in whole. We haven't done that badly this season, but it doesn't quite feel the same coming to the end of this season. Last season felt like a bit of a celebration. This season it does feel like a bit of a peter out. We'll dive into that a little bit more as we go through this one, but before we dive into the Luton game, just another mention of the Discord as well, the That's So Craven Discord, going from strength to strength at the moment. Lots of great conversation on there, as we always say. Really great engagement from some really key people in the community as well. Fulham fan news constantly jumping on there. Cottage Tactico, being able to ask him questions directly, especially after he posts, is just something that you can't get anywhere else. We really appreciate those people for joining in. Also, the ability to get tickets seems to actually work through the Discord really well. So I know there's a few people scratching around for Luton tickets. That's a really good place to try and find some. We just appreciate everyone who's joined in and actually contributed so far. It's really, really good place to be and really good place to chat about stuff all the time. So, guys, let's dive into it. We'll, I guess, put a bookend on the City game. 4-0 loss. Wasn't the best day out, let's be perfectly honest. But how are we feeling now that it's been but half a week or so since that game? Are we feeling like we've moved on already, or is it still hurting? Skibby, you first.
Doesn't hurt. I mean, come on, guys. It was Man City. They've blown away Spurs. They're about to blow away West Ham. It's just there's no stopping this machine. And I think if you said to me before the game, you're going to lose 4-0, I think I probably wouldn't take it, but I wouldn't be surprised. So I think just the nature of the defeat was a little bit lackluster. Maybe I think we could have put up a bit more of a fight. But again, to win the game, to actually, hurt City, you need to get the ball. And we couldn't get the ball. So, I mean, for me, not a surprise. I'm not hurt by it. It's one of those that you just kind of write off at the start of the season. So no surprises, not really hurting. And, we stopped Arsenal from winning the league. So there you go. That's how I take from it. Yeah.
I'm not at all depressed. Not long term anyway, by it all. It's I can move on from this very, very easily. It's just like
good.
Skippy said, let's continue. Let's move on.
Doesn't very
deserve
true.
Doesn't deserve any more of my breath.
It was sunny,
as we said.
Couldn't go wrong.
Yeah, it was a nice day at least. That's always a good way to look at it. As we said, it's Man City. Let's be perfectly honest. We're never really expecting to come out of that game with anything, but Yeah, we can definitely move forward and move on. And on we move to the last game of the season. It's at Kenilworth Road, a last chance for Luton in the Premier League. They need an outrageous swing of results to actually still stay up. Realistically, not going to happen. I think the most realistic way for Luton to stay up is to beat us 6-0 and for Forest to lose 6-0, which, let's be perfectly honest, is not going to happen to get that 12-goal swing. But Skibby, how are we feeling going into this final game of the season? Are we feeling like we're just ready for the season to be done now, or is there the same excitement that there was last year?
I think this sort of game is more for the fans. Like, the away fans are going to bring some inflatables. They're going to have a great old time. I think there's some talk about bringing some kites, which I think was quite funny if you can get that in the ground. So I think that's just the kind of nature for this game. When Fulham, there's nothing to play for. Luton, on paper, have something mathematically to play for, but realistically, it's just their kind of swan song before they get relegated. And, do they have the structure? I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong, but parachute payments, is that still a thing? I remember them talking about scrapping them for a while, but hopefully they still get parachute payments, because I think if not, then they might be in trouble that we might not see them again. So it's kind of a harsh reality of you've had your time in the Premier League, you're punching way above your weight. So there you go. And unfortunately, you won't be back. But I think, the fans will enjoy their sort of last game in the Premier League. We kind of just really want the season to be over so we can sort of move on and hopefully push on for next season and start planning for that. But I mean, there's no real high hopes. If I had my way, I would give Luton Town the 11-0 win or whatever they need, because I would rather they stayed up than Forest, because Forest are staying up because they cheated. I don't think 4 points deduction was enough for what they did. I think they bought 40 odd players for over 100 million. They spent well beyond their means. They have cheated, not been punished severely enough, because apparently they cooperated really nicely. But if any club for me, and Luton have put in some really good performances this year and got some really good results. So if any club for me deserves an 11-0 win, it's Luton.
I'd have to agree with that, to be honest. Like it does feel like the way that Forest have gone about their business, where yes, they did break the rules, but it's the manner in which they did it, and it's sort of it's not even like Man City, because Man City have tried to be sneaky about it. Forest just went out there and spent shitloads of money, knowing that they would be breaking the rules and knowing that they'd get some sort of penalty off the back of it, but saying if we spend enough money, that will lead to getting enough points to stay up, even if we get a point deduction. And so it does feel a little grubby. And I agree. I would much rather see Luton stay up, who made some really clever signings in players like Ross Barkley, and have played a good kind of exciting brand of football, considering they're massive underdogs. And it's proof as well. They were tipped to be rock bottom and go shooting straight back down again, but they've actually outplayed Sheffield United and Burnley, who were far more fancied teams coming up this year. And it's been great having them. And I do believe parachute payments are still in place. So I hope we don't see the last of them, because I think the fact that they've got this weird little ground with terraced houses up against the edge of it, and they play a different kind of football than we see in the Premier League usually. It's been great having a club like Luton up. And I really hope we don't see the end of them. Dad, do you feel like we might see quite an interesting game, because Luton do have to have such a massive swing in goal difference? What's the point in them sitting back and even bothering defending? Could they even come out and play, 3 at the back and 5 up front, just to try and get something out of this game? Because this is literally, we say it through the season, there's nothing to lose here, because they're down if they lose, they're down if they draw, they're down even if they win 6-0. They have to come out and attack.
Yeah, but I think managers, if not players, do have a lot of pride. And if you go and do something hyper risky, given that it's got to be a 12-goal swing, so even your 6 goals, call it 9 goals, aren't going to make any difference. So why would you run the risk of actually getting battered by 9 goals if you put together a really stupid plan or very, very high risk plan? I think that would just be embarrassing, and I think that would be a salty, unpleasant end to their season. So they'd probably go for pride and try and do a decent job against Fulham and not leak too many goals. I can't see them going all out because the opportunity is just not there. It's not all within their control.
The way they play at home is quite abrasive, though. I mean, they took. I remember watching the Liverpool game earlier on in the season around November, and they almost walked away with a 1-0 win with a last minute sort of goal. I think they scored in the 85th or something like that, and then Liverpool equalised really, really late on, which was a shame. But they really took the game to Liverpool, and I think that's something where they've come on quite well. Is that they utilise the stadium, the ground that they have. That let's face it. I'm sure I'm not offending anyone by saying it's not a Premier League standard ground. So therefore, it's kind of like that FA Cup magic, where the bigger team finds it harder sort of to come to a small, real enclosed pitch with not so many fans, but it still feels really loud because they're literally in your face. Sort of similar, I guess, to what sort of Craven Cottage felt like. But I think for them to be able to take the game to Fulham and basically keep playing the way that they normally play, that they will get goals. And I think they will. You've seen it throughout the season that, I think Elijah Adebayo, who we know quite well from being a Fulham grad, he's on to sort of 10 goals this year. I think Morris has done really well. I think even Woodrow sort of popped up every now and then off the bench. There's sort of these players which are just picking up goals, and not to mention that you sort of said about how good their transfers in were, sort of Ross Barkley, and how they've sort of impacted the team. But they do like to attack. It's not the sort of common relegated team who try to sort of withstand and snatch a goal. They do seem to really get in people's faces and sort of take that result to the team. Just unfortunately didn't get enough results, which would have got them that safety. But for me, I can see them being a lot of goals in this game, just because, not because they need the goals, but just because that's how Luton play, and that's why they've been quite a joy to watch this season.
I pose the question because, I mean, Dad, you poo-pooed the idea of going all out. If we were in a similar situation where we needed to win 12-0 on the final day of the season, would you be that disappointed if we went out there and got battered because we're at least trying to get the result? Personally, if we had to go out there and score 10 goals to win the game, I would rather us go down swinging, even if you do lose the game badly. I'd rather see us go down swinging and go, you know what, fuck it, let's have a crack and see what happens.
Well, you've gone from 12 down to 10.
Okay, no, I'll stick with 12. Even then, you have to score a goal every 10 minutes, effectively.
Look, and if you got it down to 6, and that was what the task at hand was, it's starting to feel like a possibility. If you went absolutely nuts and just threw all caution to the wind, defended with your heart, sure, but I'm assuming that if they don't, if they score 12 goals against us, hypothetically, and then it doesn't matter what Forest do. Is that correct?
No, Forest still have to lose.
But, yeah, okay.
But basically, imagine the pressure that comes on as Luton
losing,
go 3-0 up after 20 minutes, and Forest all of a sudden go 1-0 down. Your swing at that point is...
Who are Forest playing?
I think they play Burnley.
Burnley away.
Burnley away. So, they could
might
lose
be
that
a non-starter,
3-0.
but...
Could lose that 3-0, 4-0.
Forest could easily lose. They could 100% lose any game, I would have thought. Those bottom 3 or 4 sides, they can lose any game in the Premier League. But if it was purely them losing and Luton having to score 12 goals, it seems silly to even talk about it. But of course you'd go for it. But that in going for it, you're going to make yourself vulnerable to even a pretty modest team hitting you on the break, and we're not a bad team on the break, and we've got good enough forwards and wingers to actually cause some problems with that. So I think it's a nice conversation, but it's entirely hypothetical. I think
but my question
it's too much.
is still around. How would you be okay with Fulham getting battered if we were doing that and we were going for that result, or would you rather us?
You went for a 12-0 win and ended up getting beaten by 8 goals.
It's not going to be 8, but at least you went for a 12-0 win, and it could end up being a 4-4 draw or something ridiculous like that. But
yeah,
it's entertainment on the final day of the season, and like I said, there's nothing to lose.
Yep, I guess so.
Good. That's the answer I was digging hard for, and I finally got there. Wasn't giving that one up till you said yes.
Okay.
So let's talk about the team selection here, because there's a few, I guess, possibilities. Firstly, obviously, Diop has been suspended through his red card. Dad, I'll throw to you first. Who are you expecting to start at centre-back alongside Bassey, assuming we do see Bassey start?
Well, in the context of it doesn't matter, is Tim Ream fit? I don't know. Are we really going to push Kelvin Bassey to the right and bring Ream on the left? Kind of a underwhelming pairing for me. People talk about whether or not Luc de Fougerolles is able to step up to the Premier League. Well, he did it against a feisty Brentford, if my memory serves me correctly. Was it Brentford? It was definitely in the summer series.
In pre-season, yeah. And Villa, I think he played against.
And I don't think he embarrassed himself, regardless of whether we think he needs to grow a few more inches and put on a bit more bulk. He won't embarrass himself. So I'd prefer to see someone like that turn up rather than Bassey play out of position and Ream can't be asked to do a job, which is probably going to be pretty hard for him. I know he'd be fit. He's a professional, but he hasn't played for many, many weeks. He hasn't even come off the bench for many weeks. So it's kind of asking quite a lot. Whereas I think it's easier to ask something like this of a young kid who is adaptable and fit and probably very much up for the challenge. So I don't see Silva doing anything more creative than that. Like shuffling Zhao to the back. I don't think he'll do anything of the sort. So I think the Fougerolles for me.
Excuse me?
Yeah. My heart says de Fougerolles, but my head says Ream. It's just, I think I'd love to see de Fougerolles get a chance, but I think for me, Ream is been waiting in the wings, could potentially be his kind of last game for Fulham. I know we've got him on another year, but realistically, is he going to play? Because I think he's just going to be an understudy to Bassey now going forward. If we don't pick up another left-sided centre back anyway, so I think it'd be quite nice for him to have the swan song, and sort of get that last run out before potentially moving on or just not really getting a look in anymore. I think that for me, and it's a game that we don't care about, let's be honest. So Bassey right centre back, yeah, why not? Ream right centre back, either one. But I think it's going to be Ream and Bassey. I think because we just haven't seen even de Fougerolles make the bench recently. It's always been Ream. I think de Fougerolles could make the bench, and I think he could get a good run out if we get to a certain level. Would you put him on for Castagna right back and just give him some minutes? But other than that, I think I'd love to see a same sort of team that we put out against Man City. I'd love to see Pereira back sort of in that number 8 position again. Iwobi potentially in centre attacking mid. And I know I keep saying it, but I want to see Adama. I want to see Adama start. I'm hoping this is the time. But, you know...
Well, apparently there's an opportunity at centre back.
Oh, I mean, he'd be a very good centre back. Imagine the pace the pace of the strength. Like, no one will get past him. But I think I'd love to see Adama start, but I think I can't see anyone else change. Obviously, because I think if Lukic is still nursing the injury, I'm not too sure. But I'd like to see, more of that Iwobi, Palhinha, Pereira triangle in the middle, just to see how that goes. But I mean, I'm an advocate for Pereira sitting deeper. He's much more effective. Well, not much more effective. I think he is really good at what he does, but I think he can really hurt teams, sort of picking it up deep and then giving us that kind of outball, which we don't really have when we go sort of double pivot with Reed or Lukic with Palhinha. Just gives us a new dimension. And against Luton, you'd kind of expect, without disrespecting them, I think you'd kind of expect that deep line playmaker, very much sort of like Seri was for us in the Championship. Like, pick the ball up, spray it around, just have that control, just so much confidence on the ball. I'd love to see more of that and hopefully go into next season as well. But yeah, I don't see any more changes. I don't think we'll see much of Broja, to be honest with you. I don't see the point. But I think, it's just going to be talk about the centre back. But I mean, we've just heard that Rodak could come in for Leno, because Leno's been nursing a shoulder issue, which, is probably hindering his chances of the Euros. But perhaps he'll be rested for this game. And we'll just sort of see Rodak with either Leno benched or another goalkeeper on the bench. But I can't see much of a big shuffle, as much as I'd kind of want to. But that's pretty much all I can see. Rodak in, potentially Reem in, and hopefully Adama, if we can.
You're actually suggesting, with Reem coming in, if you like that and think that's a possibility, you're
I don't like it, but it's going to happen.
No, you're suggesting that Marco is nostalgic.
Yeah, but I think he's got a thing for Reem. There's a reason why Reem made the bench even before the whole Tosin stuff. Like, Diop was being left out, wasn't he? So I think
Reem has
an element.
Reem has smarts,
respect, and there's an element of respect.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think it's more nostalgic. I think there's a level of respect of Reem is potentially one of our better centre backs, but Bassi is better in that position. So I think if you were to ask Marco who our best centre backs are at the club, he'd probably say Bassi, then Reem, then Tosin and Diop. I think there is that element of, Guardiola said that if Reem was 10 years younger, he would sign him in an instant, because he sees something in him, but he just doesn't have the athleticism anymore. And I think there is a level of his professionalism and the way that he is a very, very good defender. He should be able to help us when we're in the need of where Tosin's not being selected and Diop's banned, that he should be able to come in and help out. And I think it's not so much a nostalgic aspect. I think it's just a level of respect, and that he is actually a decent centre-back that Marco rates.
I can also totally see Reem coming out with the armband on, because like you say, it's highly likely we won't see him again. I don't know if he'd be released at the end of the season, but he's going to be a deep cut backup player who might come off the bench occasionally. It does feel like this is an opportunity for Reem to have potentially a last start, and any future starts for him would be, in dire need of a centre back effectively. So it does make sense to me. The other thing as well against anyone like De Fougerol's playing and the other youth players is that tonight they've actually got their PL2 Cup final. I know we do play on Sunday, so there's an opportunity for them to be rested before that, but you'd expect De Fougerol's to be playing in that. You'd expect Devon Tanton, maybe a few of the other guys like Josh King who could get a run out. Because we know last game of the season, you do often see players like Harvey Elliott got his run last game of the season. I think Sessegnon and Carvalho both got their first run outs in the last games of the season as well. So it is a time to bring in players like that, but it just feels like with that cup final on the Thursday night, playing on the Sunday might be a bit of a stretch for some of those guys, might not be fully recovered. So We'll have to wait and see. I'd love to see someone like Josh King get a run out and centre mid. The other thing to consider here is this Luton game it's going to be physical. They're a big, strong team, and like you said, blokes like Adebayo, they're physical, and I think you need to have some of the bigger players out there. And I think Tim Ream handles that kind of stuff quite well. Doesn't often get shoveled off the ball. He's a bit smarter than that and gets in the right positions. I feel like if you brought in some of those youth defenders, maybe they'd just get bullied around a little bit too much, which might not work. Fully agree. I'd love to see Adama start. I think this game screams Adama, considering there'll be a lot of opportunities on the counter, I'm sure. But it's Marco. I feel like he's going to play it pretty safe, and we're not going to see a huge number of changes. If anything, Lukic has probably got over his injury, and he's probably straight back in the side. The Leno stuff is interesting, though, because I think he's looked fractionally off, and is not a slight against him, but he's not the Leno of last season, who was, unflappable, unstoppable, a seriously amazing goalkeeper, and probably the best one outside the top six. This season, Leno has potentially just slipped up a few times. Nothing major, but he's just looked a little bit off. And the fact that he's come out and said that he's got a shoulder injury that's probably going to keep him out of the Euros, it makes total sense now. I do get it, and I feel like it's a real shame that that's been the case, but hopefully in a good off season and a decent rest for him, he comes back stronger next season, and we don't have to consider potentially strengthening the goalkeeper slot.
Yeah, maybe that injury against Palace was real.
Yeah,
you beat me to it, Stevie.
Although you wouldn't be able to know, because he basically did head, shoulders, knees, and toes when he went down for that injury. It could have been anything. Guys, I'll push you both for a possible prediction for this one. Skibby, I'll throw to you first. It's probably the hardest game of the season to predict.
4-3 Fulham.
I like that. That's worth a few dollars, surely. Dad?
3-1 Fulham. I was going to ask you, Jack. Well, let's have your prediction, but I'm going to ask you, what would the bookies have to offer you in order for you to place a bet on Tosin being picked at centre back?
I just wouldn't. I wouldn't want to lose my money on something like that.
No, but you might win.
10,000 to 1.
What, just because you don't want it?
Yeah, pretty much. It's an interesting point. Should Tosin come back in? Is it a chance to give him a bit of a send-off? Is it a chance to...
It's pretty businesslike. He's pretty businesslike.
Plug a gap?
I can imagine he'll get a good send-off from the fans.
Well, no, I think it's a chance for the fans to give him something, rather. Not a good send-off. I didn't say it was a good one, just a send-off.
I think he'd be faking a shoulder injury.
Send-off.
He'd be faking a shoulder injury, so he doesn't actually even... he's not at risk of being selected.
Straight down the tunnel. No, he'll be in the hospitality suites. It'll be great for him. He'll have a great day. Selling programs out the front. No, I'm going along the same lines. I can see like a 4-all draw here, I reckon. I think there's going to be goals galore. I think it's going to be really entertaining. It's actually, no matter what the result, I think it's not going to be a drab draw with both teams sitting back and holding possession. This one's going to be full throttle from the first minute. The fans are going to be wild inside the stadium, I'm sure, because you know what it's like. We've been relegated. It's sometimes a bit of a party for the final day of the season. And Luton fans, to be fair to them as well, have taken what is effectively surefire relegation incredibly well. They're so proud of their team and what they've done this season, and they're just there to enjoy it. And so I feel like it's going to be a really good atmosphere for the game, and it'll be a good one to watch, I'm sure. Are you getting to the game, Skibby?
No. Loyalty points were not in my favour. I need about 4 more seasons before I think I can get into that kind of level of game. But no, I mean, Luton's not actually that far from me, so it would have been quite nice to get to. But hey ho, is what it is. But no, my attentions are actually going to Wembley, so which is a little bit for a slight detour of Crawley Town in the playoff final. So that's my afternoon with checking on the Fulham score in the background.
Up the town. Oh, you'll be able to watch a stream on. Well, I know somewhere you can watch a stream, but you'll definitely be able to watch the game live. Have it set up. Bring an iPad with you.
Absolutely, one eye on one game, one on the other. But no, I'm sure I won't be kept short by said individual. So thank you to that person.
Yeah, up the town. Anyway, guys, let's jump to a couple of questions. Oh, actually, before we do that, let's just finish off the Luton conversation. Just a quick form comparison. Fulham have slipped majorly down the form table recently. 16th in the form table with just 9 points from the last 10 games. 2 wins, 3 draws, 5 losses, goal difference of -5. Fortunately for us, Luton are sitting even further below us in 19th. 1 win, 2 draws, a goal difference of -14 from their last 10 games. They've conceded 26 goals in their last 10, which is quite something. They've still managed to score 12 goals in that time, which is the same number as Fulham have scored. So there's going to be goals in this game for sure. A quick look at the table. Fulham sitting in 14th. It's definitely not over for us here. A win here could potentially see us jump above Wolves and Palace, who both have quite tough games. I think from memory, Wolves play Villa and Palace play Liverpool, maybe, or it might be the other way around. So it's definitely probably in our hands to potentially move up as high as 12th. And as I think Dave said in the Discord, it's not something to be sniffed at. I think it's about £3 million prize money per place as you move up the table. So it's a potential to pick up an extra 6 million, which I'm sure the backroom staff at Fulham are definitely wanting to get their hands on because it all goes straight back into the coffers. Do you see us paying too much attention to that? Do you think Marco is going to be focused on climbing up to 12th and finishing 12th, or do you think it's just about going out there and sort of enjoying the last day of the season?
No, I think he's laser focused on getting the best possible result and finish to the season. You'd think he'd have some bonuses attached, although it probably isn't material, but there must be some financial reward for him for where he finishes. But pride alone would certainly mean that he would not give anything away. He's there's no way he's I don't think he owns a pair of board shorts. He's never on the beach.
Very true.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I think he's, with the whole financial fair play, the facts and figures, all that stuff, does finishing 12th open the door more for said targets, transfer targets in the summer? That's probably what he's going to be thinking about, is not taking Luton seriously, the difference between getting a world-class centre-back to, just another squad player. So, that's
100%.
where I think that's the way we've got to treat it. And especially where, you're not even checking by the million anymore. You're checking by the penny of how well we're doing financially. So anything that we can get in as revenue to allow us to spend more and invest in the squad, let's go for it, I think. But I think it's going to be Luton are the ones that are going to make it tougher for us, I think, in that instance of they've got nothing ready to play for. They just got to go for it and enjoy their last day and hopefully give their fans another a win as they sort of go down, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes total sense, and I agree. I feel like Marco's the kind of person who just wouldn't allow a team to take their foot off the pedal, and I feel like he's definitely going to be going to try and finish as high up as possible. So we'll wait and see what happens. But I still think this is going to be
double figures.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an exciting game no matter what. There's going to be goals, so I'm looking forward to it this weekend. Let's throw to questions now. These have come from our Discord. I'll start with the first question here. Let's go with this one, and it's sort of relating back to the league table. Do you think we've done as well as our position says in the league, or do you think other teams around us have just been better this season so far?
I think it's easy to feel like this hasn't been a very good season. But in fact, there have been kind of more highs and lows. We've been inconsistent, and we didn't have the wins against the big teams last year, like we have against the Tottenhams and the Arsenals. But we've also had some really disappointing results. So, give or take, we're not that many points adrift from where we were last season. Maybe those other teams definitely the Bournemouths, Wolves have done well. Some other teams around us that we normally expect to be, maybe below us have done. Yeah, they have done well. Bournemouth had a crazy patch for a while, and that's powered them through pretty well in the season. No, I think all in all, it's actually been a pretty successful season, but it's been super patchy, which kind of makes you feel, particularly when you're in a slump like we're in at the moment, it's fairly gloomy. But actually, there's been some very, very, very good results.
Yeah, absolute mixed bag. I mean, we lost Mitrovic. We didn't know where the goals were going to come from. We signed Bassi, and his reputation wasn't the best, I think it's fair to say. So there was an element of, we hadn't done as well in the transfer market as we wanted to. I think Iwobi was kind of a saving grace a little bit. Like without Iwobi, it would have been quite catastrophic. So I think we kind of went into the season knowing it was going to be a struggle. So at that point, my head was, we're going to finish maybe 14th. I'd be really happy with, but as long as it's above 17th, I'm happy. But then, we took points off Arsenal early doors, the 2-2 draw. We actually looked pretty good, and we were quite a healthy position sort of come the year. So come the end of the calendar year, we were actually in a pretty good position, and we beat Arsenal at home. And you're thinking, okay, we're actually, we've got Jimenez scoring now. We seem to be a bit more settled. And that's when my expectations started to go, you know what, this team could finish top 10. This team could quite comfortably finish top 10. We're giving it to the big boys. They don't like it. And we're proving that we're not here just to make up the numbers. And then I think after we get the Muniz redemption, you're like, okay, we could get Europe. The missing link was we couldn't get goals at one point. And I think once Muniz was scoring, we said, okay, Bassi's performing well. Palhinha's Palhinha. He's just going to be an absolute warrior. And we've got Muniz now scoring. Like, why can't we solidify that top 10 position? So for me to then go into losing to Nottingham Forest in the manner that we did, losing to Sheffield, I think we drew with Sheffield United, but it felt like a loss. We just absolutely even till now, we just completely flatlined, in my opinion. There was just no real structure. The structure and everything that we'd built had gone. And there was just no intensity from the team that we'd now sort of gone. We dropped from being around, I think it was about 3 points off 8th position to now sitting in 14th. It does feel like a bit of a kick that, we are much lower than this squad suggested from the middle of the team. And I think in terms of a mid-table target, we bottled it massively. I think there was a lot of games there that we should have won on paper. We didn't turn up to, Forest being one of the main ones. Even Burnley at Turf Moor, when sort of Muniz started scoring, I think it was his first goal. We were 2-0 up at half-time, but we walked away with a draw there. That was a kick. And it was just absolute Robin Hood nature. We were taking from the top teams like Arsenal, Spurs, Man United at Old Trafford, unbelievable results, and we were just handing the points back to Burnley, Sheffield United, Nottingham Forest, and you're just thinking that's complete flip side of what we were doing last year, where we were really struggling against sort of the top teams. We didn't really compete, but the teams around us we were really sort of battling with, which was good. So I think for me, this was definitely a transitional year. I think We are definitely building something. As long as we can keep the core squad together, we're building something pretty exciting. But unfortunately, I mean, if we can scrape 12th, I'll accept that. I think that's probably the minimum I would accept. But I think a 14th or a 13th finish is lower than what this squad expected.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was White Noise put out, or it might have been MJG on Twitter put out a bit of a poll basically saying, what do you consider mid-table? Because it's not properly defined, I guess. And for me, mid-table is effectively finishing between like 8th and 12th. I think if you're as low as 14th, you're basically on the edge of a relegation scrap. And it's really easy to drop from 14th down to 17th. And if you look at the results most seasons, there's not a huge gap between the team that gets relegated and the team that finishes 14th. It's usually 6 or 7 points. This season's very different, where there is quite a large gap. It's closer to sort of 20 points almost. But we have been sloppy this season. It does feel fractionally disappointing in a way, because I remember sort of approaching mid-season, we were genuinely looking at potentially pushing for Europe. And that wasn't us being like ridiculous and complete dreamers. It was close. And we were on the edge then. And yes, so many things had gone right this season, where Jimenez finally started scoring. Muniz found his feet. Polina was just being Polina. We eventually found that sort of Bassi and Tosin partnership, which went really well for a while. Castagna came out of the woodwork. Anthony Robinson had a season from, it's his best ever season. It feels like the way the season actually went, we should be much higher up the league, and we're just not. So it does feel fractionally disappointing. Yes, the other teams around us have done really well. And it's interesting when you look at those. I look at Palace have jumped up the table, new manager bounce. Bournemouth jumped up the table, new manager bounce. It's quite interesting when some new styles come in terms of managerial styles and take over an established Premier League squad. You do see that little bounce. And I think for us, we're not wanting Marco to leave, but I think bringing in some new faces into this Fulham squad could give us that sort of bounce. And I think that's what we need in the off-season to actually make that next step and become that upper half team that we know this Fulham team should be, but this season didn't quite prove to be. Dad, your thoughts on the question?
Yeah, it's just musing that we're all ready to wrap up the season. Imagine if we had 6, maybe 8 games left. I'd be pretty worried, actually.
Yeah.
I think I'd be pretty nervous. I mean, we knew we were safe a while ago because mathematically we kind of were, but geez, there's only so many weeks of this you could really not tolerate, but
it's not been an easy run, to be fair, as well. On top of that, we have had to play Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea in that period as well. Like we have had some tough games, but I agree. If we were in this current form with a few games left in the season and things are a bit closer, I'd be nervous as well, for sure.
It is interesting when you break it down and you were kind of going through the various, I suppose, highs and lows, not only in terms of results, but good signings, things that have actually worked out well. It is just the African Cup break definitely hurt us.
Yeah,
there's nothing has gone right for us really since then, give or take. But there's so many things that have actually been really, really good for the club and good for the squad. Yet we have really blown some absolute shoe-in games, and that must be really disappointing for Marco. Very, very disappointing.
Yeah, that he'd be taking that quite personally as well, and digging quite deep within himself to work out what's gone wrong and why it hasn't quite worked.
Scratching his head, why?
I agree. AFCON, it's something we didn't really touch on in terms of a reason why it's gone quite badly, but it makes a massive difference when you lose basically 2 of your starting defenders. Well, sorry, two of your starting players in Iwobi and Bassi. Ballatore, yeah, he was there, but really it didn't make a massive difference for us. But you lose those two, it does screw with your squad, because I think they were gone for 6 weeks in total because they made the final.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. And as Jim says on our live stream as well, there was the cup run as well, getting to the quarters of the semis of the cup. It makes a big difference. It's just those few extra games in the season that just puts a few extra kilometers in the legs. It does hurt you in the long run. And maybe that's a point as well to make, that it has been quite a long season for us. But I don't know. It's interesting, because I feel like it feels like it should have gone better when you sit back and look at it as a whole. It feels like this is an 11th, 10th place finish rather than a 14th place finish that it has the potential to be. Next question, and it's regarding our opponents on the weekend. Do we think Luton will come back up again? And if so, how long do you think it will take them to do so?
No.
Well, I'm assuming that the balloon payments or parachute payments.
I did Google it. It's still a thing. So
yeah, it's almost impossible with the Premier League pushing on financially as it has and continues to do. It would be a poison chalice that very few people would actually want to take if you ran the risk of actually blowing out so badly and ruining the club. You'd have to be enormously wealthy to be able to withstand that. And so, I mean, if they do get a substantial payment, then that should place them in a fairly good position from the starting point. But I don't know. It's such a competitive league, such a difficult place to get out of. Who knows? Absolutely, who knows? Probably comes down to how many players they lose in terms of their contracts from going down. Because even if you had a sack full of money, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you're going to put a decent competitive squad together, and it's just a mad scrap.
No, and I think, like you say, there are some key squad players that they have, which I don't think will be at Luton next year. I mean, Ross Barkley being one of them. I think Ogbene really impressed me. Elijah Adebayo, I mean, to get 10 Premier League goals is a really good feat for a Premier League striker. So I think he will probably be sought after. But yeah, like you say, money doesn't guarantee success. You need to have that kind of core squad to basically keep the momentum going. But the thing is, I think you need to go back up on the first year. Otherwise, you really struggle.
Yeah.
Almost impossible. I think we found. I just can't see them coming back personally. I think there's a danger as well that Luton Town did as well as they did because there was such low expectation of, just dreaming big, getting to where they wanted to be just through sheer determination and hard work. But I think when you lose that expectation of Luton is a small club that probably is a championship level club in terms of stature, when the fans will then start expecting that, we were in the Premier League last year, why can't we get back into the Premier League? And adding the more pressure and the resources, I think it just could be more dangerous for the club that the fans will have a higher expectation, which the club can actually deliver. So for me, and I hope I'm wrong because I do like seeing them in the Premier League, I can't see them coming back. I think they're going to lose too many core squad players. I don't think they're going to be able to replace said core squad players because their transfers were all players who had something to prove and weren't really a good reputation. Take Ross Barkley, for instance. Andros Townsend. Like they were finished players. They weren't anyone would think about as a Premier League player. Therefore, I just can't see them finding that kind of talent again. I think it was quite of a lucky break for them. So I won't see them come back. I hope I do, but I can't see it personally.
I'm not 100% sure. I think the championship is very hard to predict nowadays. You see, a team like Ipswich who haven't really been that close to getting promoted in a while, and now they're coming back up. Leicester were obviously going to happen, but you look at all the teams who are in and around the playoffs. It's the same ones, sort of on rotation every year. So you just never know, and like you say, you never know who they're going to lose, who they're going to pick up in the off season, how much money they've actually got to do that. I think they've probably been quite smart, and they haven't gone out and signed players on stupid, massive contracts. And I'm sure they've been quite clever in terms of business with relegation clauses in there to drop players' wages back down again. Because they would have assumed they're coming down. Let's be perfectly honest. I don't think they ever thought they were going to finish and stay in the Premier League from the offset. But I'd love to see them come back up. Will they? Might be too hard. And I guess a follow-up question to that as well. This season, I think it's the first one in a while where all three promoted teams have gone straight back down again. Do we expect to see that next season as well? I know we've got Leicester back up. We've got Ipswich coming up. I'm not sure who the third team is going to be. It looks like there'll be a fairly decent side no matter what. But do we feel like the Premier League has taken steps beyond the Championship, so much so that it's almost impossible for these new teams to stay up? I sort of opened the conversation in the Discord the other day and said it's the sort of point margin for actually staying up nowadays is no longer that 40-point mark. It's actually the median over the last 10 years is 35 points. And that's probably because the standard of those teams that have been promoted has dropped off so much so that you just don't need quite as many points anymore. Dad, do you feel like it might be that gap is just too big now?
In the end, I think, clubs that have been around the Premier League for a long time and happen to slip up and go down, get some money, strike a bit of luck, also have the kind of name and the history to sign players, and players are more likely to believe in a club that has done it before and has actually operated at Premier League level for a while, but just had a bit of a bad patch. Whereas it must be mighty, mighty difficult for Oxford Town, Crawley Town to come up, for really small clubs that just don't have a very big following. How they're going to generate the kind of revenue that allows them to spend the money to stay up there, and how they're going to attract players. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be players that want to play for a Premier League club, but in order to get the best pickings, they do tend to go after, those who can pay well and those who have, I don't know, players definitely chase a name when they're thinking about their next club.
Mm.
I don't think it's difficult. I think managers will always take on a challenge. If you pay them well enough, they'll take on a challenge. Managers have long careers, players have shorter careers, and I think it's kind of different.
Yeah, I personally can't see Leicester staying up, if I'm honest, just because they are going to get a points deduction anyway. If I'm reading it correctly, they need to sell players, so that core squad argument goes out the window for them, because I think Shrewsbury Hall's going to leave straight away. Like their top talent will just get ripped apart. Ipswich, good manager. Do they have the resources to bring in the sort of talent to keep them in the league? Not convinced. And then I think there's an element of the teams coming up who are the sort of usual suspects. Like I think West Brom are in there, Southampton and Leeds, and then Norwich, but Norwich are their own breed. But I think the sort of Southampton, West Broms and Leeds, who have been in the Premier League quite recently, they're probably out of the two, the two automatically promoted. I think the playoff winners are probably the ones who have the biggest chance to stay up, because I think they've got more experience in Ipswich. They're not going to be hindered financially like Leicester will be. So, but it's still that golfing class that I don't know if you saw, but the playoff semi-finals, each game was 0-0 first leg. It wasn't exactly thrilling. So I don't think there's a lot of quality coming up. I might be wrong, but I don't see the quality in the playoff teams. I think that, Hull City were very close to getting into the playoffs. Coventry City, after they had a great run in the FA Cup, they were close to the playoffs. There was a lot of sides that could make the playoffs towards the end of the season. It was no shoe-in, so I don't think there's going to be a real team that's going to come up and really, put the sort of fox amongst the chickens type deal. But so I can see personally the 3 teams coming up getting relegated, just from that aspect alone, unless they do something extravagant in the transfer market.
Yeah, no,
there's something
I'd
structurally wrong about all of that, though, isn't there? It's
Yeah, I mean Leicester made their own bed, but yeah, you're quite right that I think the playing field is so vast now. I think it's actually got worse that financial fair play came in. I think the teams that could come up, throw a load of money at the wall and just in order to try and stay up. If it didn't work, then you just got tremendous debts. But if you're smart about it, then you could try and recoup that money in relegation release clauses and sort of things in the contract. But now, Ipswich are going to come up with very little resources. They're going to be hindered by financial fair play anyway. Not much else you can say for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're going to have to do effectively what Luton have done and be very clever in the transfer market and make some astute signings, pick up. And that's where, blokes like Bobby Decordova-Reid and Harrison Reid, those guys who would probably leave the club for not a pittance, but we're talking, these guys are all well under 10 million, but established Premier League players who could do a job for a team like that and be a key player for a team like that. That's the kind of signings that you have to make, but it's just hard to do that nowadays. And you have to be a combination of clever and lucky, I think, to actually make that come off properly throughout the whole season. But look,
one might cynically argue is for the top clubs, financial fair play absolutely working a treat exactly as it's planned to.
Yeah, well.
Keeping everyone where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like the idea of the relegated clubs staying up, though, and having a bit of constant churn in the Premier League. It's just the problem is we're one of those clubs that are potential churners. So it's good to have a bit of competition for sure. I'd like to see it, but we'll wait and see next season because I agree. I don't think the 3 sides coming up look like they're going to be strong enough to actually challenge. And we might have another season like this where after 15, 16 games, we can pretty much, sit on the beach and say, yep, we're probably safe this season. Guys, I'll finish with a final question. It's a bit more lighthearted, this one. Which Fulham player would you invite on a night out?
Oh.
Go on, Skibby.
Current Fulham player?
Current Fulham player, yeah.
I think I would want to go with Calvin Bassey. Just because of his interviews, he seems so much fun and he just seems pretty wild. So I think Calvin Bassey, you just create so much chaos. So, yeah.
I like that, Dad.
I reckon if I was in a noisy pub or a club, I wouldn't understand a word of Calvin Bassey. Particularly if he's with a Wobie. Not a word. But
the youth slang. We'll send you a translation, Elton. We'll get you up.
Thank you. But I couldn't agree more. They're good lads. They seem like a very fun bunch of guys. But I don't know. I think I'd probably go Tom Kearney.
Yeah, I reckon he'd be pretty decent on a night out. I would have to echo Skibby. I think Bassie's a shoo-in for being just wild and having a very good night out in the town. Follow up to this as well. Which Fulham player would you avoid inviting on a night out?
Who would I avoid inviting? I'd probably say Leno. Just because he seems a bit of a stickler, a bit boring, doesn't he? He just
German though, he
like
could hold his beer.
He can hold his beer, but he would just sort of sit quietly in the corner. I think he's sort of that, just sort of, smiling, happy to be there, but wouldn't really like offer much banter or anything. He would just be there to make up the numbers type thing. That's just the vibe I get. So apologies, Burns, if you're actually a massive party animal and really fun, but you just come across boring.
Look, this could come across terribly, but I don't reckon Sasa Lukic is much fun. And last time I looked, Belgium wasn't that interesting a country either. Sorry, apologies to all the Belgian folk out there, but so I don't think that would be high on my partying list. And I reckon Adama's a pretty quiet guy. I don't think he's got much chat about him.
Yeah, true. For me, Marek Rodak, just face like a slapped ass at all times. Doesn't look like he's ever having a good time. I feel like that would be a real downer at the pub.
Apparently a very popular guy. Apparently very
I think he is, but yeah. No offense, Marek, if you're listening, but yeah, not for me. And a final one to follow up the questions. Who would be the Fulham player you'd call when you are inevitably sat in the police station after your night out with Calvin Bassey?
Polina. He's got a dad vibe
just
about
a pure
him.
muscle.
Pure muscle, but he's also got like a dad vibe about him, just being like you just be like, you and Bash just in the cell being like, "Hey Joe," and then he's just like, "Come on."
Hanging his head in shame.
He would just seem like, yeah, exactly. But I don't think he wouldn't pick up the phone and just be like, "Zhao, we're in a lot of trouble here. Can you help us out?" I don't think he would be like, no. He'd be like, "All right." He just gives me that kind of vibe.
Not again.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's different to being, I'm in a fight, I'm cornered in a bar, and I need helping out, as
that would
opposed
also be
to
Zhao, by the way.
Well,
that would also
actually, yeah. So, but I think that's different to I've done something really stupid, and I'm in a police cell, and now I've got to get myself out, which actually requires a bit of sweet talking. So, I actually think. I might actually ask Tom Kearney because he's, wears the captain's armband. He's constantly talking to the refs to try and get himself. This feels like one of Sam's bloody episode.
Yeah, it's a proper cottage cheese, isn't it?
It's a proper cottage cheese. Yeah, yeah. I don't think I wouldn't have any of the. I wouldn't have Pereira trying to sweet talk a policeman to try and get me
he'd
out of jail. He'd just be whinging. He'd just be whinging. Yeah, maybe Leno might actually make a good, sensible argument and might be treated with a bit of respect and credibility. And I think
I do like your Tom Kearney. I do like your Tom Kearney answer. I think the captain, he's a sweet talker. I reckon he'd come in there, get you out quite easily. I like that one. I think that would be a good one. Guys, I think we can wrap it up there. Our final preview of the season, all done. No more of these having to talk about what's going to happen. Not until next season when we're just going to win every game and storm the league and qualify for Europe, which is going to be beautiful. But it's been good talking about this game. I was very surprised we managed a full hour on it because I didn't think there's an hour's worth of chat about Luton, but it turns out there is.
Fact check, there wasn't. We just talked a lot.
It was about half an hour of Fulham and then just a lot of chat about who you go to the pub with. But either way, we managed a full hour. Well done. But it's been really enjoyable doing these previews through the whole year. I hope the people listening along have enjoyed them as well. And I really appreciate the time everyone puts into this, not just the people who take part in the show, but also the people on our live stream, the people who always download the episodes and comment on Twitter, join in on Discord. Really appreciate all the support through the year for the previews. So looking forward to next season already, because I think next season there's a lot of positivity ahead for us, and I'm hoping it's onwards and upwards for Fulham going forward. Skibby, thanks very much for joining us today, mate.
No worries at all. And yeah, thanks for having me and getting me involved in the previews. It's been real fun. So thank you again.
And up the town on the weekend, fingers crossed.
Up the boys, up the Reds.
Dad, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And, obviously only one game to go, but I'm actually looking forward to some of the off-season stuff that I happen to have heard about. And I'm sure you'll be telling everyone about that in due course, Jack. And they could probably find out about it on the Discord if they chose to be there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to some of those sessions that we've got coming up.
Yeah, we've got some really cool stuff coming in the off season. There'll be some season wraps. We'll obviously be covering transfer news, but we've got a couple of interesting guests joining us as well before the end of the season. Well, maybe not before the end of the season, which is on Sunday, but before we wrap up for summer, effectively. And yeah, it's not going to be a quiet one for us. We're definitely going to keep cracking on through the summer and making sure that there's Fulham content all the way through to the start of next season for everyone. So please do make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. Please share it around all your Fulham friends as well. Make sure everyone's got a chance to listen in, and really looking forward to some of the stuff we got coming up. So guys, let's wrap it up there. Thanks again. Looking forward to the game this weekend. Looking forward to discussing it as well next week. And as always, come on, you Whites.